Ngozi did her incantations with her members, with Amaka's image appearing in a huge mirror in front of them. Ngozi held a knife, chanting and calling out Amaka's name, while the other members continued the incantations. Just as Ngozi was about to strike Amaka's image on the mirror, a sudden spark saturated the coven. It was a very sunny day. The sun was very scorching and unbearable. Amaka had just come back from an interview, feeling depressed as always. It seemed as though nothing was working. She had written countless of interview tests and sent her CVs to different companies, but none of the companies replied her mail and the test. She wondered, I did so well writing those tests. Why is it that they don't always call back? Is something wrong with me that I don't know of? Or am I cursed? Everything I do is not working. I honestly need this job. Otherwise, how will I pay this rent? Amaka pondered, feeling down. The landlord had come to the house that week, requesting for his rent, which was a month's due, and Amaka had made countless promises to the landlord to give her some time. The following day, she went to the church for counseling. When she got there, she met the pastor, and she told him what she had been going through. He smiled. Amaka looked at the pastor, wondering why he smiled after all she said to him. Then she said, Pastor, I am confused. Why are you smiling with all I had just told you? The pastor looked at her and said, Amaka, all of these are just series of tests. How strong is your faith in the Lord? Do you believe that God has plans for you? Amaka was shocked and surprised. She didn't understand what he meant. She kept wondering, how could all this be a test? I have always been active in church. Amaka is one of the best choristers in church. Her voice can lift up anyone who is going through situations in life. Most times, when she sings, members of the church would fall under anointing. Those that were sick would receive healing. That night, she kept asking God, why are all this happening? She had lost all hope. Amaka's friend, Ngozi, came visiting that night. She saw Amaka in a very devastating state. Amaka, she called out, why are you like this? You need to be strong and stop all this that you are doing. Amaka looked at Ngozi as tears dropped down her face. There is nothing left for me. I am cursed. My Father in heaven has abandoned me after all my service. She wept her eyes out all night, making herself feel worthless. Amaka never knew that the cause of her problems and misfortune came from no other one but her best friend, Ngozi. Ngozi was one of an evil secret cult, and she had vowed with her members that she would make Amaka suffer and denounce her God. That night, when she came to Amaka's house, just after Amaka had slept, Ngozi's spirit left her as she went to her evil secret cult, taking with her Ngozi's jewelries to do some incantations so that Amaka would be ruined each passing day. The members gathered and they did all the incantations and went back to their body one by one. The next morning, when Amaka woke up, she had a strange dream. It seemed so unclear to her. Amaka took it upon herself to fast and pray for 7 days, asking God for his mercies. When she told Ngozi of what she had planned to do. Ngozi tried convincing her that it was pointless. She kept reminding her of her service in church. "Why do you need fasting, Amaka? Haven't you done enough? See, I have a solution to all your problems. Just agree that you will follow me tomorrow and everything will be solved." Amaka looked at Ngozi with so much happiness and relief. "Are you for real? You mean all these problems I am going through will end?" "Yes, they will vanish like they never came," Ngozi said. Ngozi's words echoed in Amaka's head as she kept thinking. Suddenly, she heard a small voice in her head saying, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." She knew that that voice couldn't just be her thoughts. So she yelled out, "Please leave. I need to be alone," she said to Ngozi. Ngozi looked at her in shock and said, "What did you just say?" Amaka held Ngozi's hand and walked towards her door saying, "Please leave. I need to be alone." Ngozi looked at Amaka and said, "You are sick. Look at this one. This worthless fellow I am trying to help. Anyways, you know where to find me when you are completely ruined," she hissed and left. Amaka shut her door. She knelt down, asking God for mercy. That day, she prayed like never before and fasted. Days passed, and it was the 7th day. Ngozi had waited for Amaka to call her, but Amaka was busy praying. That night, Ngozi left her body as usual to her evil secret court. She made up her mind to finish up Amaka since she had refused to call her. As they all gathered and did their incantations, Amaka was praying, determined for change in her life. She prayed like never before. As Ngozi did her incantations with her members, with Amaka's image appearing in a huge mirror in front of them, Ngozi held a knife, chanting and calling out Amaka's name, while the other members continued the incantations. Just as Ngozi was about to strike Amaka's image on the mirror, a sudden spark saturated the coven as they all fell and disappeared. Ngozi went back to her body, paralyzed from the sudden spark that had occurred in their evil coven. Amaka, on the other hand, felt a huge relief after praying, a satisfaction that she had never felt before. The next morning, Amaka got a call from one of the companies she applied for work. She picked up her phone and answered, "This is Noye from Global Tech Industry. I am calling to inform you that your application has been approved and you are to resume work on Monday." Amaka was thrilled. "Is this a dream? Oh my God." She knelt down and she kept thanking God. That same day, Amaka still got series of calls from those same companies she had applied for work. Amaka got a job and she was given accommodation and a car. She was living her dream. Ngozi, on the other hand, was on her bed. Her body was still paralyzed. She managed to write a note to Amaka, pending when Amaka comes to visit her, after which the note was beside the bed, as her hands on it. Ngozi couldn't hold it any longer, as she gave up. One day, Amaka decided to visit her. As she got to her house, she opened the door, and she perceived a terrible smell as she saw Ngozi laying lifeless on her bed, with a note and a pen. She quickly ran to the nearest station and called for help. When they got to Ngozi's house, it was confirmed that Ngozi was dead. Amaka picked up the notes and read. She opened her mouth as tears dripped down, and she called out, "Ngozi, how could you? I thought you were my friend. How could you do this?" Amaka dropped the note as she left crying. When she stepped out, she looked towards the sky. Her life has been a phase. She suffered in the past, thinking she was cursed, not knowing that her friend was the reason behind her past suffering. The story highlights friendship and warns about how you trust friends, because even the closest of friends could be your greatest enemy. So it is very important to know the kind of friends you mingle with and know what you say to them. And also be careful of how close you are to them, because you never know. They could just be the reason to your sufferings. If you enjoyed this story, kindly give it a huge thumbs up and subscribe if you are new to this channel. Until then, I'll see you in my next story. She felt her heart pounding in fear, but she tried to compose herself. So she knelt down to greet her stepdad. He quickly held her by his hands and drew her closer to himself. So close that Chioma looked at him in shock and said, "Dad, what is going on?" He quickly held her mouth, saying, "Shh, dear, don't worry. I just want to teach you a game, and I know you will enjoy it." Chioma looked at her stepdad in shock. She was confused as he kept touching her and it was a dark night for Chioma in her 16th year on earth. Her stepfather had not come close to her. Her mother, Nkechi, remarried after the death of her father, who died in a car accident. Ever since her mother remarried, her stepfather had been so loving as a father, and she was so happy about it because she didn't feel the void of losing a father. 6 months after Chioma's mother got married, her stepfather suddenly would look at her in a very strange and oddly way, a way that a father shouldn't stare at a daughter. He would buy her gifts almost every time he comes from work, and her mother wasn't sensitive enough to understand her husband's intentions. She thought he was just being a loving father to her daughter. One day, her mother stepped out to visit a friend. Chioma was in her room studying, while her stepfather was just arriving from work. He noticed that his wife was not around and that his stepdaughter was in her room. Suddenly, he started having dirty thoughts and strange thoughts of Chioma. He couldn't hold it any longer, so he went to her room. Immediately, Chioma saw her stepdad in her room. For some reasons, she felt her heart pounding in fear, but she tried to compose herself. So she knelt down to greet her stepdad. He quickly held her by his hands and drew her closer to himself, so close that Chioma looked at him in shock and said, "Dad, what is going on?" He quickly held her mouth, saying, "Shh, dear, don't worry. I just want to teach you a game, and I know you will enjoy it." Chioma looked at her stepdad in shock. She was confused as he kept touching her and finally made his way, holding her mouth as she kept struggling. Chioma was miserable that day. That day happened to be the worst day of her life, the beginning of her life being ruined by her stepdad. After he was done and he made his way, doing what is forbidden, he begged her and promised her that it would not happen again. He also begged her not to tell her mother. After a while, he heard his wife calling out his name. She had just come back from visiting her friend. Suddenly, he ran out of Chioma's room, cleaning the sweat on his face. He saw his wife and said, "Honey, you are back. How was your day?" He gave her a kiss on her forehead, like a loving husband, not knowing he was a devil in a sheep's clothes. She replied him saying, "My day was good, and I had a beautiful time talking with my friend Jessica. By the way, where is Chioma? I haven't seen her in a while since I came back." Chioma was in her room, still trying to get a grip of herself. She heard her mom's footsteps and quickly rushed to the door and locked it, as she kept shivering in fear. Nkechi heard her daughter's room shut, and she was worried, so she quickly rushed to the door, knocking as she said, "Chioma, open the door, what is going on?" Her husband was by her side, with guilt in his face. She turned to him saying, "Honey, what happened? Why did Chioma lock the door? What is going on?" He said nothing, looking at her as though he had no idea what was going on. Chioma couldn't sleep that night, as her mother also was worried in her room, while her stepdad was sleeping. "How wicked of him to do this to me," Chioma said to herself, crying her eyes out. The next morning, Nkechi saw that her daughter's door was open, so she rushed in. She met her daughter sitting beside her bed and looking outside through the window. She looked so depressed. Nkechi didn't understand why her daughter was like that, looking so down and depressed. She walked close to her, holding her by her shoulder and calling out her name. "Chioma, my princess, what is going on? Why do you look so down? And why did you shut the door last night?" Chioma looked at her mom crying. She couldn't say a word or tell her mother what her husband had done. The man whom she called father ruined her life in just one day. After much persuasion, she said to her mom, "Mom, I am okay." Her mom couldn't believe that all was well with her daughter. So she said, "My daughter, you don't look okay. You look scared. Please tell me what is going on." Still, Chioma couldn't say a word to her mother. Days turned into months, and her stepdad continued having his way at any given time he desired. Chioma became a victim of circumstances, as her stepdad kept raping her. Chioma longed to confide in her mother, but she didn't know how to, or how her mother would feel, or if she would believe her. But her stepdad already threatened her. He warned her not to say a word, otherwise he would kill her. Chioma's spirit dimmed by the weight of her stepdad's cruelty. One day, Chioma was determined to tell her mom what had been going on. When she saw that her mom was going to the kitchen, she followed her and quietly went to her in fear as she said, "Mom, please, I need to tell you something. Can we talk in my room?" Nkechi saw her daughter shivering and looking in a very devastating state, and she quickly took her to her room. Immediately they went in. Chioma shut the door. Nkechi was worried as she said, "Chioma, please talk to me. What is going on? You know you can tell me anything." Chioma looked at her mom and cried out, He raped me, Mom. Your husband has been raping me. The day I shut the door when you were coming to my room was the day he started raping me, Mom. Chioma kept crying out, feeling completely ruined. Nkechi's world was torn apart. The very man she loved has ruined her daughter's life. Nkechi cried out as she held her daughter close to her, vowing to seek justice for the unspeakable crime her husband had committed against her child. Immediately, Nkechi rushed her daughter to the hospital. When they got there, it was confirmed that Chioma was pregnant. Nkechi was bitter and consumed with anger as they left the hospital. When they got home, Nkechi met her husband and confronted him about what he had done to her child. He looked at her with guilt and denied ever knowing what she was talking about. Then he went into his room. Nkechi held her daughter while she called the police. Her voice was shaking as she told the police what had happened. An hour later, sirens wailed around the house as they stepped in and arrested Nkechi's husband, the man she loved who became the devil in a sheep's clothes. He didn't know that Nkechi would call the police. He kept begging as he was taken away. Nkechi turned to her daughter as she felt guilty for not protecting her daughter. She begged her to forgive her. Months later, Nkechi lost the baby while giving birth in the hospital. There was some complications that led to the loss of the baby due to the fact that she was still a teenager. From that day on, Chioma embarked a journey of healing with her mother by her side. Her mother promised her that she would always protect her. From that day on, Chioma and her mother felt peace, forgetting their horrible past. This story signifies that one should always be conscious and sensitive of whatever that happens in your environment, especially with your children, keeping them safe and protected from strangers. If you enjoyed this story, kindly give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in my next story. The battle between light and darkness raged on. Nneoma's eyes flashed with a fierce intensity as she summoned the ancient powers of her ancestors. The air vibrated with energy, and a blast of light shot forth, striking Okonkwo with incredible force. He stumbled back, and his dark magic. In a city of Lagos, a successful businessman sat in his lavish office, surrounded by symbols of prosperity. But his thirst for wealth drove him to seek more. He needed a loan to invest in a lucrative venture, and his search led him to Okonkwo, a wealthy and mysterious figure. Okonkwo offered Emeka a substantial loan, but at an unusual high interest rate. And without hesitation, Emeka accepted the terms. As he left Okonkwo's mansion, he felt a strange sensation, like a weight settling upon him. Days passed, and Emeka's business flourished, but he began to experience strange occurrences. His equipment were malfunctioning, and his employees acted strangely. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, Emeka received a strange message from an unknown number. You have borrowed more than money. You have borrowed darkness. Chills ran down his spine as he realized Okonkwo's true nature. He was an occultist, and the loan was a curse. Emeka tried to confront Okonkwo, but he vanished into thin air. He started panicking as his business began to crumble. His family turned against him, and his friends deserted him. He was trapped in a web of deceit and darkness. When it was time for Emeka to pay up the loan given to him by Okonkwo, Emeka was struggling earnestly to pay up, and as the days progressed, the interest on the loan grew exponentially. Emeka's world went out of control. He became a shadow of his former self, haunted by the evil loan. And then, the unthinkable happened. Emeka's world was turned upside down when Okonkwo henchmen stormed his office, seizing his assets and dragging him away to a mysterious location. Emeka's mind raced as he was thrown into a dark, damp cell, a stench of decay enveloping him. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Okonkwo appeared, his eyes gleaming with deceit. "You should have read the fine print, Emeka," he sneered. "The loan was not just money, but your soul was attached to it." Emeka's horror was compounded when Okonkwo revealed that his true intentions is to harvest his business and transfer it to his own realm. Emeka's screams were drowned out by the sound of his own heartbeat as Okonkwo began the dark ritual. Just as all hope seemed lost, a faint glow emanated from the shadows and a figure emerged. It was Nneoma, the priestess from the village, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "I will not let you claim another soul, Okonkwo," she declared. The air was charged with tension as Nneoma and Okonkwo faced off, their powers locked in a struggle that would determine Emeka's fate. The battle between light and darkness raged on. Nneoma's eyes flashed with a fierce intensity as she summoned the ancient powers of her ancestors. The air vibrated with energy, and a blast of light shot forth, striking Okonkwo with incredible force. He stumbled back, and his dark magic flattered. Emeka seized the opportunity and broke free from his restraints and joined Nneoma in the battle against Okonkwo. Together, they unleashed a torrent of light and energy, pushing the darkness back. But Okonkwo refused to yield. He summoned the horde of shadows to surround Emeka and Nneoma. Their powers combined in a display of light and sound. As the battle raged on, the temple began to shake, trembling with the force of the conflict. Suddenly, a wise and ancient powerful ancestor gazed upon the battle with sorrowful eyes. "Enough!" he thundered, his voice shaking the temple. "Okonkwo, your darkness will not consume this land." With a wave of his staff, the ancestor dispelled Okonkwo's charms with a chain of light. Emeka and Nneoma stood panting. The ancestor turned to Emeka as he said, "Your thirst for wealth and power led you down to a dangerous path, but I sense good in you. Will you choose the light or continue down the path of darkness?" Emeka hesitated, torn between his ambition and the evil he had witnessed, as he said, "I choose the light." The ancestor smiled, nodding in approval. "Then let us begin your journey to redemption." And with that, he led Emeka and Nneoma into the hidden chamber, where ancient secrets and mysteries awaited. In the hidden chamber, Emeka discovered the true nature of wealth and power. He learned that true prosperity came from balance and harmony, and serving others in truth. The ancestors cleansed him from darkness and restored his connection to the natural world. The ancestor declared Emeka's redemption complete, and the temple began to glow with a radiant energy. Emeka returned to his village, where he used his newfound wisdom to benefit his community. He built a sustainable business, inspiring others to follow his example. The moral of this story is that greed and ambition can lead to darkness. Our choices have consequences, and it is important to seek a balanced and harmonious path in life, using our wisdom and courage to lead others through a brighter future. More so, the power of light will and always overcome darkness. Thank you for listening, and subscribe if you haven't. Do let me know your thoughts about the story. As she walked, strange flashbacks haunted her. Memories of her parents' death resurfaced, and she realized the mansion was the same place her family was torn apart. But that wasn't all. In the city of Lagos, a young housemaid named Ada scrubbed the floors of a grand mansion. But little did anyone know that Ada's past was shrouded in tragedy. As a baby, her parents were murdered by armed robbers, and she was left alone, forced to survive on the streets. Years passed, and Ada's hardship only grew stronger by the day. One day, while wandering the streets, she saw a help wanted sign for a housemaid at the same very mansion where her parents were killed. With a mix of emotions, Ada applied for the job and was accepted. As she walked, strange flashbacks haunted her. Memories of her parents' death resurfaced, and she realized the mansion was the same place her family was torn apart. But that wasn't all. She discovered the family she worked for was responsible for her parents' murder. Ada's pain and anger simmered, but she hid her true feelings, biding her time to make her plans. The family, ignorant to her secrets, treated Ada with kindness, but her heart was set on revenge. One fateful day, Ada prepared a special meal for the family, lacing it with a deadly poison. As they sat down to eat, Ada's heart raced with anticipation. As the family took their first bites, Ada's eyes was fixed on their faces, her hearts pounding in their chest. They have to pay for this. They killed my parents, so they have to pay, she said to herself. She had planned this moment for so long, and now it was finally here. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The family chatted and laughed, ignorance of the danger lurking in their food. They kept eating. But then, subtle changes began to appear. Their smiles flattered, their eyes grew glassy, and their movements slowed. Ada's grip on her cleaning tool tightened as she watched the family collapse. She had expected this moment to bring her closure, but instead, she felt a hollow emptiness. Just as she thought the family was slipping away, the eldest one among them suddenly lurched forward, his eyes locking onto Ada with a strange intensity. "You!" he croaked, his voice barely audible. "You are the one!" Ada's heart skipped a beat as the family's eyes turned towards her, their faces twisted in a mix of anger and shock. And in that moment, Ada realized her plan had not gone as smoothly as she thought. The family gaze seemed to pierce through her, as if they knew her secrets, as if they knew her true identity. Ada's mind raced with questions. How did they know? What did they know? And then, everything went black. Ada's world went dark as she crumbled to the floor. The family accusing eyes searched into her mind. When she regained consciousness, she was tied to a chair. The family surrounding her and their faces twisted in anger and betrayal. "You are the one who's been poisoning us," Amechi, the eldest one, said, his voice dripping with venom. "You are the one who's been seeking revenge." Ada's mind raced as the family's words tumbled out, revealing a web of secrets and lies that went far beyond her own story. She learned that the family's wealth was built on fraud and deceit, and that her parents had been silenced to protect their empire. As the family's rage boiled over, Ada realized that her quest for revenge had unleashed a far greater evil. She was trapped with no escape from the consequences of her own actions. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, a sudden commotion erupted outside the room, shattering the tension. The door burst open, and a figure strode in commanding attention. "Enough!" A tall, handsome man named Emeka thundered, his voice authoritative and firm. "This ends now." Ada's heart raced as the family turned to face the intruder, their faces filled with a mix of fear and defiance. Who was this person? And what did he want? Could it be Ada's savior or her executioner? Emeka, a tall and imposing figure, strode into the room, his eyes fixed on the family. "You have gone too far," he declared, his voice dripping with authority. "Your reign of terror ends now." Ada, still tied to the chair, watched in amazement as Emeka approached her. "You, Ada, are the victim of their cruelty," Emeka said, "but you are also a perpetrator. Your quest for revenge has led to this moment." With a swift motion, Emeka cut Ada's bonds, freeing her from the chair. "Choose your path, Ada," he said. "Seek redemption or continue down the path of destruction." Will Ada seek redemption, or will she continue to haunt the family, leading her to the path of destruction? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section.